Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and today we have a very special edition of the 10 Questions Podcast with one of our own here at PFF. He is a research and development intern, part of Michigan Football Analytics Society, which as a, outspoken Buckeye, I'm not a huge fan of, but you know what? When you're right, you're right. He does a great job. Matthew Stafford, defender himself, Tej Seth at TEJFB Analytics on Twitter. I'm sure you've all seen his great research, great memes, all the above. Tej, thanks for the time, my friend. How's it going?
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I've literally only worked on one stats homework assignment this whole week, so this is a nice break to come on and talk about football with you today.
Dude, I remember, Tej, current, actually a current student at Michigan. So, someone that was just loving my Buckeyes getting stomped there not that long ago. But it's funny you bring up that stats class, man. Like I remember, that was in college around your age was when I first started writing and doing my own football research. Obviously, like you're a little bit ahead of where I was at that point. But I remember complaining to my stats teacher, trying to get my grade bump. One of those bullshit things, man, where like if they would just literally round up, like I had the grade I wanted, so I wasn't trying to be a huge dick about it. But the one thing I was trying to like get him on my side, I was like, bro, look, I'm using everything I learned here in my football articles. Like, you should be thankful I'm doing this. Not so much. That's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes, Tej. Enough about that. What we want to talk about today is first go through some of your, background being a long-suffering Lions fan, talk a little bit Matthew Stafford, Super Bowl preview, and then I want to touch on an article that you wrote actually this past summer about NFL running back regression, the theme we've been trying to have on this podcast over the last few weeks, looking ahead to Dynasty, trying to project what players are going to do in the upcoming years, not just falling back on what we saw in 2021. So first off, man, mentioned it, long-suffering Lions fan. I apologize for everything you have had to go through. But with that said, there's still been some good times along the way. Give me your Mount Rushmore of Lions moments, games, whatever that you've had the pleasure of experiencing so far.
Yeah. If we were to do a Mount Rushmore of moments or players or something like that, I think we'll talk about Stafford in a little bit, but I think like my favorite non-quarterback player was Golden Tate.
Nice. Correct answer. You answered the question well.
He was, and you've tweeted about this before, like he was the best yards after the catch receiver like I've ever seen. Every time he caught the ball, the play wasn't over and stuff like that. And then like so many memorable celebrations, flipping into the end zone to win the game in Minnesota, doing the people's elbow, like that wrestling celebration against New Orleans and stuff like that. So like, I almost wonder like what he could have been like if he was used in like a Deebo Samuel role, considering like how good he was with the ball.
Would have been great just to even, we see it nowadays of Ohio State against Utah. They had Jackson Smith and Jigba just running routes from the backfield. I saw the Panthers do it, DJ Moore a little bit, Cowboys, CD Lamb. Like you can put the guy back there. And it was funny, Tej. I got completely eviscerated by football Twitter like last offseason. And it was one of those things where I tweeted it late at night, probably had a few drinks, and then looked back at the mentions in the morning, and big football Twitter wasn't happy because I brought up the idea that a running back, when you leave him in the pass protect, best case scenario is he does his job. He accounts for the blitzer, the rusher, whatever, and you have the sound protection. My thought was, what if you just always release him on a route? Now, always, not actually always, but I'm the one that said always. So, because my point was, if you take him out on a route, he's still accounting for a player if they cover him. But if they don't cover him, now you have a huge game with him right there. Now, modern quarterbacks' ability to process all 5 of their reads with a, zero blitz coming. I get it. There's some, big assumptions I took there. But man, using these wide receivers in the backfield, like if you're looking for something to keep on studying in this offseason, I would love to see just how, much the mismatches you can create by having that receiver as a running back, because there's, defenses have to flip like their entire responsibility scheme to try to handle that.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a great point. And, like if you look at like the Rams 49ers game this past week, like I felt like Jalen Ramsey's impact isn't as much when he's guarding Deebo Samuel as like a true, like typical wide receiver one, because like if Deebo lines up in the backfield, then Ramsey's on the wide receiver two, who's like not as good anyways. Right. Or like something like that. So like, that's like a good way to like get rid of like a star shutdown corner by putting a wide receiver in the backfield.
The credit to Brandon Staley last year really being the first guy to be like, hey, Jalen, it's fun watching you shut down the opposing number one all game, but we kind of like you to have a true impact around the line of scrimmage every single play. It is legal to move your best players around on defense. Tej, Matthew Stafford, let's not bury the lead here. You have been his biggest supporter that I've seen here on Twitter in recent memory, and you've had a lot to cheer about. Objectively speaking, though, where would you rank him among every quarterback this season, including the playoffs, most important football? I hate when people, exclude the playoffs to hide their own damn agendas. But objectively speaking, where would you rank Matthew Stafford in the year 2021, 2022?
Yeah, I don't want any bias to bleed into analysis here, so I'll try to keep it objective, like you said. Just overall body of work this season, I think he's shown he's a solid tier 2 quarterback. Ranking around like 8th best, 7th best, maybe around there. He's not top 5 because he makes too many mistakes. Like when he throws his interceptions, sometimes they're with a clean pocket and just being super aggressive, and you don't have to do that, right? Yeah. But and then he has some stretches of areas of the season where he'll become really inaccurate for a little bit, and then he'll get it back eventually. But everything that he does good, I feel makes up for that, and that's why he's been a really good quarterback this season. He's opened up the whole field for the Rams. He's gotten the explosive play rate back into the McVay offense, and ranking first in EPA per play over the regular season and the postseason, even if some of it is scheme and throwing to Cooper Kupp and stuff like that, is still really, really impressive and shouldn't be understated.
I think it's important what you said there, where he has these great highs, and yeah, there's some lows as well, but we've seen him do it the whole playoffs. Stafford at his best is capable of being the best quarterback in the NFL. We're not saying he is, but he can go through it for stretches. So when I see the big viral tweet going around was the Rams have the advantage everywhere, what do the Bengals have, and the swagger looking picture of Burrow getting off the bus, and I get it. I would personally take Burrow over Stafford in the game. But man, it is not that cut and dry. I think we could have a conversation about which one is better. And at a minimum, man, if Stafford shows up to play, he could absolutely outperform Joe Burrow for 60 minutes. Yeah, no,
I totally agree. And Burrow had a wonderful regular season, probably better than Stafford's regular season, but Stafford's been a lot better in the playoffs so far. Stafford's basically, other than the kind of the red zone interception, which was probably his fault, but just a tip ball in the 49ers game, and then he got really lucky with the dropped interception later in that game. But other than that, he's been basically flawless in the playoffs so far, especially since his team has kind of tried to do everything they could to lose some of these games for him. The Bucs game, 4 fumbles by his teammates, and he's still able to lead the game-winning drive. And then the 49ers game with not being able to run the ball whatsoever, and him being the only way to the passing game being the only way to generate offense and stuff.
All right. You mentioned Stafford, great postseason run. Obviously, if Stafford's going to have a great run, that means this guy, Cooper Kupp, is as well. Kicking off the playoffs, he caught 5 of 7 targets, 61 yards and a touchdown, 9 catches, 183 yards in the score against the Bucs, and then 11 catches, 142 yards and 2 scores against the 49ers. Tej, I've always, and I think everyone else is pretty consensus, we all gave Larry Fitzgerald the best postseason run ever by a wide receiver. Honorable mention for me, Hakeem Nicks. He had an awesome 4-game stretch in that second Giants Super Bowl before he fell off pretty hard. But we give Larry Fitz number 1 spot. Would you give Cooper Kupp that nod if he goes ahead and puts up another 100+ yards and scores once or twice here next Sunday?
Yeah, it'd be really close. I was young when Fitzgerald had that great postseason run. I think he had it was 550 yards and 7 touchdowns.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now, but I that sounds right.
Yeah, but that's really impressive back then because the NFL wasn't as big of a passing league as it is now, and everything wasn't catered towards the quarterback receiver connections. So for Larry Fitzgerald to do that, I feel even if Kupp goes off in the Super Bowl, it'll be close, but Fitzgerald should probably keep that number 1 spot for now. But not to take away from Kupp, he's been insanely impressive this postseason and throughout the whole season. They don't beat the Bucs without him. Having the 75-yard touchdown, 3rd and 20, and then 2 very clutch catches on the final drive to set up the game-winning field goal. That'll be remembered by Rams fans and the rest of the NFL forever.
Fitz got 7 touchdowns, Kupp's at 4. So yeah, I think what I brought up, that's not enough. 100 yards and a touchdown, that's not doing it. And when you look at Fitz, he did go over 100 and scored every game. Kupp in the Cardinals game, only 61 yards, like boo-hoo with what we're going on there. But yeah, maybe if Kupp's yardage total starts with a 2 and has a couple extra numbers alongside it, and then we get a 2-3 touchdown game, Cooper, just a casual 200 yards and a couple touchdowns in the Super Bowl, that probably is how he would get to that conversation. Great stuff, Tej. Now, I want to pick your brain here again on this excellent article you wrote on NFL running back regression. I actually just had an article go up today on PFF.com, basically talking about how like the myth of 400 touch running backs, like all of a sudden just falling off a cliff. And after I wrote that, I was starting to prep for this podcast today, and I found your article on this. And I was like, my God, I hope that I didn't just come to a completely different decision or conclusion than Tej did. Luckily, we seem to be on the same page. So I want to go again through some of the facts and fictions that you brought up here. Again, people can find this article on pff.com. But Tej, starting things off, one of your facts was that running backs do in fact have a drop off after their rookie contracts conclude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this has been something that's been talked about a lot, especially by like the running backs don't matter community. But basically, using the rushing yards over expected metric, which is basically creating expected rushing yards for a running back based on the game situation, like the down, distance, and yard line. And then also using like the offensive lineman and whoever else was blocking on that play, though their grades on that play to determine like how many yards an average running back will get on that play. And then the amount of yards that the running back ends up getting is like their rushing yards over expected on that play. So if we look at like, what the average like rushing yards over expected per year is, the amount of time they spent in the NFL, the first 4 years for a running back is all positive. And then when they hit their 5th year, they start to see negative, and then that basically continues for the rest of their NFL career. And it should be mentioned that like even these are like the running backs that are making it to their 5th year are the good running backs that have like performed well.
Right.
So if they're falling off in their 5th year and they're having negative rushing yards over expected, like that should show like they usually don't do well after their rookie contracts and stuff.
You would think the bad running backs have already been weeded out by the time that we're getting to this. So no, that's a great point. And before we got on this podcast, I was looking at just in fantasy, we go top 12. That's your RB1, usual 12-team leagues and all that. So I looked at years of experience over the past 10 years, what percentage of each position, is racking up these top 12 finishes. And for running back, man, 13 to 18% of the top performers are in years 1 through 5, 1 through 4, especially. After that, though, just starts to drop off harder than any other position. And I think particularly, man, like once you see that team change, because we got free agency coming, maybe like the Derrick Henrys, the Aaron Joneses of the world, maybe I can buy into the first couple of years of a second contract. If they're still with that team, once we start changing the environment, though, things can get ugly in a hurry. Now, you do have a fiction, and this is what, I was introing with, and I'm happy we came to the same conclusion, because fiction, running backs burn out after receiving a heavy workload the year before. It just doesn't add up, Tej. People might want to go out and say, oh, look at Derrick Henry. What about Derrick Henry? What year are we going to use? The 2020 where absolutely nothing happened after a 400 touch workload, or 2021 when he only played 8 games after it? So tell me your findings here and kind of the myths surrounding running backs burning out after just 1 year of a heavy workload.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, this was something I've heard a lot, about either whether in the fantasy realm or just like football in general, is that like, oh, if a running back like hit like 300 carries in this season, like the next season they usually don't do well.
Dude, people try to say like 370 specifically. Like, what are we doing here? Come on. I know all numbers are a little bit arbitrary, but like, come on.
Yeah, yeah, I know that is pretty arbitrary. But yeah, so then I took a look. I was like, okay, so if they have, let's see what the correlation is between rushes in year N, and like N is like the current year, and then like let's see what their average rushing yards over expected was in year N+1, which would be the next year after that. And so what I actually found was there was like a very slight positive correlation between the two, which like again makes sense because the running backs getting a lot of carries the previous year are probably a little bit better, so they're probably going to do pretty well the next year. But it was good to find that they didn't like have like a burnout, or they weren't able to perform well after like receiving a heavy workload.
Now, Tej, the next two I think kind of go together because yes, single season stuff, we're 100% same page. You shouldn't be using that for next time. But I do think it makes sense. We've talked about how running backs drop off after their rookie contracts, why they're dropping off, why not beforehand, because you got a lot of miles on those wheels by some point in time. So one of your facts is that for all types of RBs, there is a carry limit where we can predict a negative, rush yards over expected, RYOE, as you indicate. And what the fictional part of this is that a heavy college workload doesn't exactly mean that the running back won't do as well in the NFL. So explain this one to me, because again, this is one of those things where, like, going into last year, the big issue was Derrick Henry and all the workload he had. One of the things I checked was including the college carries and touches, like Ezekiel Elliott had like a full extra season on even what Derrick Henry had gone through at that point. But it does make sense that, we got to draw the cutoff somewhere. I'm sure everyone out there has seen Derrick Henry's high school game log that goes viral every couple months. Like, we do need to draw the line at some point. So tell me why that, yes, we do need to kind of be keeping track of these guys' overall speedometer, while at the same time, extra college usage might not matter as much as people like me think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, to start with, like, when what the carry limit is when they decline. So in the PFF era, which is like 2006 onward, there have been 27 seasons where a running back headed into that season with 1,500 carries. And only 7 of those resulted in positive rushing yards over expected. So like 20 of them were underperforming, which was like pretty significant chunk. And like the trend line was pretty clear when it was like graphed out and everything. Like, once a running back hits that like 1,500 carry limit, if they're headed into the next season, they're usually going to kind of decline. And like, that is like something, like you mentioned, like that's pretty specific to just running backs. Like, it doesn't really appear for other positions. Like, we've seen Aaron Rodgers win back-to-back MVPs now at ages 36 and 37. We've seen Tom Brady play at a high level into his 40s. And then, Cole Beasley was 32 and 33.
Manuel Sanders is still done good things.
Manuel Sanders. Yeah, exactly. So like, receivers, quarterbacks, like, we can see this at other positions. Running backs, once they hit like that 27 age mark and like the 1,500 carries comes in and stuff, like, that's usually when we're going to see some decline in them.
Did you find any sort of difference in carries versus touches? It would make sense to me if carries, like, were just kind of, because you said like it doesn't impact the other positions. These wide receivers, they're getting tackled by 215 pound cornerbacks and safeties. Running backs are the ones that are really, running up against the 300 plus pound behemoths all the time. Have you done any extra research and kind of difference with the carries versus like the receptions?
Yeah, no, that's a great follow-up. And I did look at that after I wrote this article, and like, the touches aspect of things didn't seem to have as much of an influence as the carries did. And like, that, my theory behind it was like, yeah, what you mentioned, like, I feel like when you're getting tackled by a linebacker, it's not as much wear and tear as getting tackled by like a defensive tackle, or like multiple of them when you're running up the middle or something, right? So yeah, that was something cool to look at too, for sure.
God, I love when, common sense using what we see on the film actually matches up with these handy-dandy analytics as well. Now, why is the heavy college workload basically irrelevant? We just haven't seen the effect, and, if we haven't seen the effect, there's no reason to believe in it?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, when I looked at like, rushes in college compared to like how they ended up performing in the NFL, again, there didn't seem to be like a trend where if they were having like a huge amount of workload in college, like, they were going to perform poorly in the NFL. Like, Jonathan Taylor had almost 1,000, touches in college at Wisconsin, and like, he's done great in the NFL. Nick Chubb had almost 800 touches at Georgia, and he's done great in the NFL. Like it doesn't seem to be like a huge issue for these running backs and stuff. Like, there's no like there's not running backs entering the league that are like more fresh than other running backs and stuff. Yeah.
I've read some good reports from Dr. Evan Porras, who's been on the pod several times. I shout him out every freaking other episode. Hi, Edwin, if you're listening again. But with fantasy points, and two of the things that he's like really just stood tall on, referencing, actual scientific work from learning, doctors, everyone, about the idea that both being injury prone is a lie. And yeah, just basically the idea that, 1 year or even, a couple years, sometimes with the college, having that workload like just doesn't necessarily like grind. We're not playing a video game. We have like a health meter necessarily, and we can tell where these guys are at all times. So, and again, that's one of those similar things where I was looking at the 400 touches where it's like, yeah, there's some examples of the people falling off, but trying to correlate these two things together, I think that's where people, once they actually take a longer look at it, will struggle to draw that conclusion. Now, a couple more here. Fact, the draft position of a running back is more important than the actual running back himself. Now, this might piss off a lot of you dynasty scout tape watchers out there, but Tej, like at some point, man, you can look at, I'm not saying the NFL draft process, is a perfectly efficient market or anything like that. At a minimum, though, I don't think they're terrible by any stretch. And more than anything, when you have a guy with the higher draft capital, I know Pete Carroll and Kyle Shanahan, we have some exceptions here or there. I think they're going to win that position battle more times than not.
Yeah, no, this was like probably my favorite finding of writing this piece was, like looking at what like day the running back was drafted on, and then like how many defenders in the box that defenses put on their run plays. And like, we talk about like when Derrick Henry returned from injury, we were like, okay, like the tight ends are going to have more, linebackers and stuff in the box now, should make their play action passing game easier and stuff like that. So like we think that like the type of running back kind of like matters for the box defenders. But what I ended up finding was that the day that the running back was drafted on like correlated pretty well with how many box defenders they got. And this carried with them throughout their whole career in the NFL. Wow. So like even like in years 5 and 6, even if that running back wasn't performing well, they were still having like defenses really respect them because they were a first round running back. And like I don't want to make Cowboys fans.
I was about to say, you could just say Zeke, man. You're teetering around it.
like Zeke is like a perfect example of this. Like if you stripped away like where he was drafted and like, kind of like, I don't know, like the aura of his rookie season and stuff, right, and just straight up looked at like how he was running and his metrics in these past couple of years, like he wouldn't be getting that many carries on like many teams. But since he was a running back drafted in the top 5 and like kind of like led the charge, and when the Cowboys went 13-3 and stuff, like he still gets that type of respect from both his team and defenses.
Yeah, man, draft position, like, follow the money sometimes here. And the draft position is correlated to how these contracts are going. And, I have found similar findings in free agency, where once you kind of see these running backs and wide receivers making 10+ million, we can't guarantee they're going to be fantastic players, but you do tend to see over time these talents with more higher draft capital, with more money put behind them, get more opportunities. Makes sense. We've seen it play out. Final one here, Tej. Fiction. Adrian Peterson should have a higher rushing yards over expected than Jamal Charles because Charles did not play as long.
Yeah. No, this is a good one. So when I first created rushing yards over expected, I posted this graph on Twitter, and it kind of showed like, the average rushing yards over expected for like each running back since 2006 that had like a certain amount of carries. And so Jamal Charles is all the way in the top right because like he basically broke the scale, right? And a lot of the common responses to that were, well, like, Charles only played in his prime and he retired early. Like when you factor in like the fact that Adrian Peterson was, playing like much older and like went way over the 1,500 rush number that we talked about and stuff, like, Adrian Peterson's actually the better running back over Jamal Charles. So then I adjusted their rushing yards over expected by year in the NFL by like what that like average usually was, and then like adjusted it based on their age.
Yeah.
And Jamal Charles still broke the graph, just like a little bit less than what he did before, but it was still like significantly better than Derrick Henry, Adrian Peterson, Frank Gore, and stuff like that.
People have such a hard time with like the best or the MVP argument. If we're looking at the last 10 years though, and just saying best career, most productive stretch during that for running backs, I think it's hard to get away from Adrian Peterson. He did play more, showed it time and time again, even did it some other teams. But man, the best running back, I think we gotta go with Jamal Charles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I agree. I think Charles, like,
This is just rushing. This isn't even receiving.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, I mean, he was a great receiving back. You wonder what he could have done if like he didn't get banged up a couple times in a couple seasons. But like, I remember, I think it was like, was it like his 5 touchdown game against the Steelers?
Oh my gosh!
Like that
was it Raiders? Raiders?
Yeah. Oh, it might have been Raiders. Yeah, like that was insane. Like I remember like seeing. I was like, I think it was the Lions game was on then, and like every like 10 minutes they were like cutting away to the Chiefs game, like showing him scoring, and then coming back to the Lions game like over and over. I'm like, that's amazing. Like Jamal Charles is like an all-time player. I hope he makes the Hall of Fame.
Oh, he better at some point, man. But you can never count on those Hall of Fame freaks.
Yeah, no, you don't know for sure.
So we'll see what goes on with that. Tej, again, fantastic article. You can all find that on PFF.com. I'm sure you'll have some more goodness here ready for us next offseason. Final question I have for you. I mentioned this at the beginning. You are a part of the Michigan Football Analytics Society. Again, I hate that. I hate Michigan. I'm not saying congrats for last year. We'll get you this year, knowing that you're a smart man. I know you wouldn't let your, fandom get in the way of objective analysis. So, Tej, how many more wins do you think the Wolverines are getting over my Buckeyes over the next 10 years?
To prep for this question, I asked my good friend Jacob, who's the most optimistic Michigan fan I know and like a massive one. And he responded to me and he said 1
yes.
win over the next 10 years. And so I was really surprised by that. I don't know. I think Michigan should be able to get between like 2 and 4 or 2 and 3 maybe wins over Ohio State over the next couple of years. But no, the game this year was like a perfect storm of, just playing at home. The team was really bought in, and like the strength, like with the snow and everything, like the strength of Michigan being able to run the ball on, really like the weakness of Ohio State was the run defense. So like it was a great matchup, and had a lot of fun watching that. But
man, the thing that would concern me, like I saw Hutchinson just have his way with that line all day. And that was kind of like Oregon did that too against Ohio State. They controlled the line of scrimmage, and Thibodeau wasn't even playing in that game. And Oregon really won because of how physical they were. So man, like if I wanted to be the pessimist Ohio State guy, I'd be worried about this program just kind of being soft, but I don't know, like maybe that's just more of a 1-year thing. I will say like Michigan, definitely better team deserved to win this game. I hear you. Nice points about the snow and stuff, but better team, you don't win by 15 by accident, but you look back at some of these games, man. 2016 was the spot good. 2013 when they had the 2-point conversion, Tyvis Powell picked it off. Like there's been a lot of coin flip games, and Ohio State has seemingly grabbed a couple of those. So even if maybe the cards are stacked more on the Buckeyes side like they have been, I wouldn't be shocked if a few of these random games maybe go the Wolverines games, go the Wolverines way over the next 10 years.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that. And like that's why I've defended Harbaugh for all these years. Like it's not a coincidence if you've succeeded at 4 different places. Like you're probably a pretty good head coach if that's happening to you. But no, I'll be keeping a close eye on Ohio State this upcoming year because of Stroud and like the fact that the Lions will probably be in the quarterback market.
There we go.
In next year's draft. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see, how he performs compared to Bryce Young. And if anyone else like pops up there, but that's getting like way ahead of like where we're at right now.
Tej, fantastic stuff, my friend. Thank you again for the time. People can find you on Twitter at Tej, TEJFB Analytics. Anything else you will get off your chest, my friend?
No, I'm, excited for the Super Bowl. Hope Stafford plays well. Go Rams.
There we go, man. I'm leaning towards betting on the Rams, but I don't know if I keep seeing it depends what Joe Burrow's get up is getting off the bus. This is going to be going down to the kickoff thing. We got to work with all the information that's available to us. For Tej,
that should be a prop bet. Like what Joe Burrow will wear coming up the bus.
We're betting on the Gatorade cooler. Give me, tinted glasses. Is he gonna what type of chain is he gonna have on? What color visor is Jamar Chase gonna wear in warm-ups? Get after it, betting markets. I want to do all this stuff. Thank you, as always, for tuning in, everyone. For Tej, I'm Ian, and until next time, take care, everybody.